What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi, and that is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page. Subscribe to the Miami Herald for your latest Dolphins updates. Like, share, comment on the YouTube page, all that good stuff. Now, if you thought that we were going to be free of concussion talk, head injuries, all that, you were sadly mistaken. You were sadly mistaken. The Dolphins losing a big divisional game to the New York Jets in New Jersey over the weekend, 40-17. But they didn't just lose the game; they lost another quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. Y'all good there? Y'all good there? Say something like
that score is still 14.
yeah, it wasn't as bad as I don't think the game was as I don't think it was as bad as the score indicated, but we'll get into that. But as I said, the Dolphins lose the game, they lose another quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, after just one play, the hometown kid, a lot of excitement for the Liberty City native to play for his hometown team, get his first start with the Dolphins. He is, I don't want to say knocked out of the game, but he's removed from the game after one offensive play. And this was a result of the new concussion protocols that were passed by the league and the NFLPA, the Players Union, just one day earlier on Saturday. They announced some new protocols adjusting the no-go symptoms that bar a player from re-entering the game. Teddy Bridgewater was hit. His head hit the ground after his first pass attempt, which was actually a safety. He was a little slow to get up, and he went to the medical tent. The team announced that he was dealing with an elbow injury and also being evaluated for a head injury. He soon went back to the locker room with the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant. Several minutes later, he was ruled out for the game after, and what we found out later on was that an independent athletic trainer, an ATC spotter who was in the press box booth, noticed him stumble. And they diagnosed him, I guess, with ataxia, which is this new no-go symptom in the league's updated concussion protocol. Essentially, it says that if you stumble, if you have an unusual gait, they are going to, as in an abundance of caution, remove you from the game and bar you from going in. So Teddy unfortunately wasn't able to go back in that game. The team said that he passed or he cleared all the concussion evaluation. He was not about exhibiting symptoms or signs of a concussion after the game and even the day after. So it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation. Seventh round pick Skylar Thompson enters that game. Pretty rough spot for a rookie to come in at that spot, and we saw him kind of struggle a bit. He wasn't helped by the circumstances around him. He has two backup offensive linemen, but big picture, we have a lot of anger in South Florida, a lot of Dolphins fans who are demanding answers about this ATC spotter and this situation where there were even local South Florida TV stations with the cameras at MetLife Stadium, and they had video of Teddy Bridgewater that was released. And there was no apparent stumble, nothing to the extent of Tua when we saw him a couple weeks ago against the Bills. Nothing like Naheem Hines of the Indianapolis Colts. When we saw him, he was clearly out of it. His legs were giving out, and he was clearly concussed. There was nothing like that with Teddy. So there's a lot of questions being asked and answers being demanded of who is this ATC spotter that is now in charge of essentially ruling guys out. Now, in the past 24 to 48 hours, we've had a lot of conspiracy theories. I'm gonna just put it that way. A lot of people saying, how do we know that this person isn't being bribed and they don't have, some interests and ulterior motives in this game? And what if this happens? And I'm not gonna go that far and start saying, this dude had or this person had ulterior motives. This person was, had it out for the Dolphins. I will say it is kind of ironic and a bit of misfortune that they put these new rules in, and the Dolphins are the first team that has a player ruled out because of it. I will that is kind of a little bit of irony. But I will say this: when you talk about the optics, we talked about the optics of Tua hitting his head against the Bills, going back into the game, and 4 days later sustaining that concussion. We talked about the bad optics of that. I will say there are optics in play here where there's no, I mean, the video that we've seen. Now, this person in this booth, they have a whole bunch of different video angles and camera angles that they're viewing the field from. And if they decided that they saw something that needed that required Teddy being removed from the game, I mean, that's what they say. I would like some transparency on the NFL's side about this, because we had a Zoom call right after they updated these protocols on Saturday. I'm in New York. I'm on a Zoom call asking questions, and I was like, what is the difference between this ataxia no-go symptom and the one they had before that it replaced? So before, they had this thing called gross motor instability. And everyone was saying it was a loophole, because if they decided that if the doctor and the neurotrauma consultant decided that the player, stumbled because of, like, in Tua's case, a back injury that they claim, he can go back in. But now, the chief medical officer said, we're not going to make it a judgment call. We're just going to say, if you stumble, if you wobble after a hit to the head, we're taking you out. I don't know if that's any different from what we saw before. I mean, in my eyes, I mean, that's a judgment call. If there's an eye in the sky that sees somebody stumble and they don't know if maybe it was because of the back, maybe it was because Teddy's elbow, maybe he struggled to kind of get up at first because of the elbow. I mean, we don't know, but this eye in the sky person has the say. Now, I don't know if they have the final say, because the concussion protocol say that anybody, any independent trainer, doctor, or the team doctor can make that call and say, I saw one of these no-go symptoms. So the team doctor could have said that about Teddy. The unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant could have said they saw Teddy stumble. I don't know if any of those people saw that as well. I mean, we just don't know. I guess only the league and the PA will know at this point. But I will say the optics of it don't look that good, and I feel like we're almost seeing like a overcorrection to everything that happened, that transpired with Tua. Now they've changed these concussion protocols mid-season. Even the hit that knocked out Tua, people have been questioning, is that right? In the past couple of weeks, we've been seeing a lot of calls on roughing the passer. I mean, even in the Chiefs game, Chiefs and Raiders game Monday night, I mean, there was an egregious call that should have been a strip sack and a fumble recovery, but instead we get a roughing the passer penalty. Again, I think that I don't think this is going to be like a weekly thing where we got guys getting pulled out the game, but there are fair questions. Like, if you are in a significant game and this ATC spotter happens with, I mean, again, it's human error. I mean, it's football. There's human error from the players to the coaches to the refs. You could have a situation with human error where you see somebody stumble and what you see maybe isn't what is actually taking place. But again, I will say the NFL and the medical officer, he said on Saturday, like, we're gonna mislabel some people, but we'll take that risk to keep players safe. But again, the optics of it aren't good, and hopefully the NFL, I know down in South Florida, it hasn't become a national story, but in South Florida, a lot of the reporters have been asking for questions. We reached out to the NFL. I'm hoping that they provide some answers soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, and with all the camera coverage on your average NFL game, I mean, you got more coverage on that than Spielberg has on half his films. You can't tell me that, okay, somebody from above saw something from a distance, clear enough view from a press box or whatever, or saw it on a different camera view, and that you can't have that camera view available to say, hey, this is what the person saw. I find that very strange. And I don't go in, I'm not going in for the big conspiracy theory. And now, if you tell me that this person thought they saw something and made a mistake, and that then now you got people maybe covering for him, I'd more likely to believe, because that's sometimes the nature of the beast, and especially with the NFL and the way they're and the fire they're under right now. But yeah, it's a tough thing to call. There's something between what was something obvious to me, like Tua getting up after the hit against Buffalo, and the way he looked for several steps, as opposed to it was a stumble. We see players, these marvelous athletes, we see them, get tripped up by the turf monster all the time, and so that can happen on the sidelines. You take a hit, you go off, you're on the sidelines, and it, just take a misstep, and that misstep takes you out of the game. Now, that's a little tough. That's a little tough. And I do think the NFL is. I do think there's a general attitude of overreaction right now. And I think I do think it's because you had such a jarring injury on a
Prime
nationally
time. Yep.
televised game, and it immediately put it into everybody's head. Jump concussions right back to the forefront of the conversation, of the NFL conversation, instead of who's the last unbeaten team, or why does the AFC West look like it does, or why does the NFC East suddenly look good, or at least have good records, and so yeah, I think that's where we are with the NFL right now. And I think it's fairly obvious that we saw. I mean, obviously there was the call, but from Atlanta sacking Tom Brady on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yep.
That was a terrible call, and everybody knew it was a terrible call. And then everybody said, "Well, does that call get made if it's not Tom Brady?" Because remember, if you look at the play, he goes down, he gets up, he's doing his celebration. Tom got up and kind of stood over the official, like, well, almost like when somebody says something about your girl, and she's looking at you to do something about it, and you're thinking, well, number one, number one, he was right, but number two, I might take an ass whooping here. But Tom was standing over him, and then he threw the flag. So everybody was, for a day, everybody was like, okay, it was that was a Tom Brady call. I've never heard of any. Okay, we've had the Tom Brady call for quite a while now in the NFL. We don't have the equivalent of the Derek Carr call. I mean, that was not Patrick Mahomes whose back was getting jumped on,
Yeah.
getting strip sacked. Where you go, okay, see, it was Patrick Mahomes. They're going to call it. No, it was Derek Carr. And so obviously that says it's an overreaction when you have these plays that are just very obviously just football plays. And it was just like, the Tua play was a football play. They didn't throw a flag on that one either.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you didn't throw, and it was a football play. You didn't throw the flag. Maybe you could have, but you didn't. And these plays were certainly not as. There was nothing about them. It was football. Guys getting tackled. How are you supposed to tackle Tom Brady?
Yeah, it's like at some point, you can't take, and a lot of former current players have said, like, you can't take the violence out. I mean, you can try to initiate some certain rule changes and whatnot to limit it, but it's an inherently violent game. Like, how else are you supposed to tackle the quarterback? It's like somebody was saying, you can't go low anymore because of the Tom Brady rule back in 2008. You can't go high because they want to watch out for concussions. You can't follow through with your tackle because then it's like you're putting your weight on them. Like, how else are you supposed to? Like, we even saw it in the Monday Night Football game. Like, Max Crosby literally just wrapped up Patrick Mahomes, and then they whistled the play dead. He's like, "All right, gotcha." Like, you just kind of ran off after that. Like, hours. Like, at some point, it's almost like you can't, like. You have to let the guys play. You have to let the defensive players make a play at the end of the day too. So I feel like there is an overcorrection because there's a lot of heightened sensitivity to it. And again, going back to the Teddy issue, like, I don't think that we're gonna see quarterbacks taken out, week after week. I mean, somebody said, like, if that was Tom Brady, if that was Aaron Rodgers' way of taking them out, I don't know. Like, this is the first time this has happened. So I don't know. But I think that this was, and again, it was a bit of irony that it was the Dolphins first. but this is a bit of an overcorrection. And once, they get a couple of weeks into it, they review it and they're like, all right, maybe we shouldn't have taken him out for that. Maybe we were a little too cautious, overcautious there. Then it'll come back. I mean, we saw the thing with like pass interference a couple of years ago when they tried to make it an emphasis. And it's like we were seeing flags all the time for defensive pass interference, holding. And after there was like an overcorrection, everything kind of averaged out and it kind of bounced out. And then it was like, all right, we're good now. So it was unfortunate that it happened to the Dolphins. Now he's in concussion protocol. The earliest he can practice is Thursday. I mean, I think that even a lot of the people in the NFL, office said like the worst or the best case scenario, or I guess the worst case scenario of taking a player out when he didn't have a concussion is you take him out, he doesn't have a concussion, and he doesn't, and then they're able to return back soon. So for Teddy, it looks like that'll maybe be Thursday if he, isn't exhibiting signs of a concussion.
Yeah, and that still means he misses the major work. Kind of the Wednesday work day. And it, did it cost possibly the Dolphins a division game?
I
Could
mean,
have.
I mean, hey, it was a
You know,
1917 game in the fourth
right,
quarter, and they were down to their third string quarterback and
right,
a pair of backup tackles. I mean, yeah, I mean,
right,
you could fairly you could say that the game would be different if Teddy was in there, but
right, right. Okay, and this final score was the final score. But it was 1917, and they were, they had they missed a field goal to go ahead,
and after
and
that it
that's where
was
they were. What they, as you said, seventh round rookie playing his first NFL action versus playing the whole game with a veteran backup that you
signed
signed
for
for
that very reason.
just
Yeah,
this emergency.
yeah.
So yeah, it could have. It boy, this is one of those again. Just like the Baltimore game could be a game that puts you in the playoffs.
Yeah, this is a
This could be
divisional
one of
game too.
those
So
divisional game, right? This could be one of those you look back on, and once they get to that like second, third tiebreaker or whatever,
yeah,
that could cost you the playoffs. So it's, and I say the NFL is in a tough position. Uh, they're trying to. They've been, I'm not trying to shed tears for the NFL. Please, they're printing money. They still are, despite everything that's happened the last several years with concussions and despite the rules adjustments that kind of cause people to roll their eyes at least a couple times every game with, oh gosh, come on, really, that's a penalty, you know. But this is a league having to make this adjustment on the fly, and they're gonna have some growing pains for a couple of weeks. They're not in a good, there's not in a good position. But you know
yeah.
what? You're the NFL. Sit there and take it. Count your money. You know, and let's move on to each week.
Yeah, I mean
Move on to next week.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and that was kind of the message on Monday from Mike McDaniel. There was a lot of questions about the spotter situation and whatnot, whether they were gonna, kind of bring it up to the NFL and kind of get some explanation for, what they saw, because McDaniel himself said he did not see Teddy stumble, but like he said, they're moving on to week 6. And it's an important game, as they're trying to end a 2-game losing streak. We're gonna talk about all of that, but first we're gonna take a quick break. So stay locked with us. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast with David Neal, talking all things Dolphins. So after a tough loss for Miami, they're moving on to week 6. They're coming back home to Hard Rock Stadium to host the 4-1 Minnesota Vikings. But before we really get into that, I think more importantly, we gotta talk about the state of the team. 2 consecutive losses. I kind of say the honeymoon phase is over. This is gut check time. 3-2. I won't say a must-win game, but a game that you need to get back on track. But there's a lot of uncertainty with this Dolphins team, and I wrote it in my story. There's not only questions about how they're going to turn around this 3-2 start, but with whom, because the Dolphins were racked by injuries on Sunday. I know nobody likes to make an excuse for injuries. It's next man up mentality, but again, as I wrote after the game, it's tough to say next man up when players who are fundamentally, are important to fundamentally what you do when they're not there. Obviously there was a point in Sunday's game where the Dolphins were without Tua, they were without Teddy at quarterback. Teron Armstead left with that lingering toe injury. They've been playing with their backup right tackle Greg Little for the past couple weeks. In the secondary and the defense, there was no Xavier Howard, who was out with the groin injury. Byron Jones hasn't played this season yet. He's not going to play week 6. And it's like, again, you can't, nobody cares about your injuries. The game still has to be played. But again, these are fundamental core players to what you do. I mean, they built this entire offense. They brought McDaniel to build this offense around Tua. On defense, they built their identity around what their cornerbacks can do. And when you're not playing with your cornerbacks, you're not playing with your starter or your backup. I mean, that and your left tackle. I mean, that definitely hurts as a team, and you definitely saw it at points in that Jets game. At this point with Tua, I mean, McDaniel said on Monday that he hasn't taken steps yet to do football activity. That was on Monday. Today's Tuesday as we're recording. I don't get the impression that Tua is going to be able to come back in time for week 6. Teddy's not going to be able to practice until Thursday, and you have that question of is that enough practice time if he comes back on Thursday? Right now, it's looking like Skylar Thompson is QB1. But again, I mean, we asked for a litany of injury updates for several players, and there was nothing definitive. Teron Armstead, McDaniel said he was going to continue to try to gut through this injury. Xavier Howard's day-to-day, but you just don't really know. I mean, there was no definitive answer like these guys are good to go. I think that maybe that's the most worrisome part. Obviously, as the week progresses, we're going to get injury reports and we figure out what happens. But again, I mean, when we entered this season, I think that we all agreed that this was definitely a team with talent. I mean, you spoke about this might be the most talented Dolphins team since the early 2000s, like the Wanstead days. But at some point, the injuries do kind of pile on, and you can't function. I mean, next man up, yeah, but the next man up isn't as good as the man that went down. I mean, it's next man up, but it's not. They're not equals. So it's. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough. I mean, this Vikings team is 4-1. Their only losses to the Eagles, who are the only undefeated team remaining. They've kind of sneaked out some close wins, but again, I mean, I think that when the schedule first came out, this was the beginning of the schedule where you were like, okay, yeah, if they get past that 4-game slate, which they did, they finished 3-1. The thought process was like, all right, they can maybe start to stack up some wins against the Vikings and against the Steelers and the Bears and the Lions. But then you get to that game, and it's like the Vikings are 4-1. They have a potentially dangerous offense. You have a lot of injuries. This is not a cupcake game at all. I mean, this wasn't going to be a cupcake game without all the injuries. But when you factor in the injuries, it's looking bleak. I mean, I don't know how anybody right now can look at the Dolphins right now and say, yeah, like they feel confident about this game with all the injuries to their major players.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I mean, when the people love to say, "Oh, next man up." Well, if the next man up was as good as the guy who went down, then he would be playing. And so, when your corners are down, that does, and you want to play the type of defense the Dolphins do, that affects what you can do with your pass rush. Yeah. And in a passing league, your defense starts with your pass rush and pretty much ends with it too. If you can't get to the quarterback in this league, forget it. You might as
the rules just favor the offense too much, and there's too many talented players out there.
Right. I mean, look, for the moment, the rules favor that. The rules have done that for the moment they changed the rules in '78 for the downfield contact rules, beyond 5 yards. When they changed that, that's when the pass rush became king. That's when Bill Walsh a few years later said, hey, the key to winning in the NFL is a pass rush in the fourth quarter. Because these games are tight, they're going back, and here, somebody's going to be trying to drive to put the game away or to win the game, and that's when you desperately need your pass rush. Anyway, that said, the moment those rules got changed, if you don't have a pass rush, you can't. Your DBs can't hold on to coverage. You can only hold on to coverage so long, and then especially if you have a any kind of quarterback with any kind of mobility and ability to scramble and really extend the play, you can't cover for that long. You just can't. So, Xavier Howard and Byron Jones being down affects what the Dolphins can do as far as blitzing and as far as that affects the pass rush. That that affects everything. That affects that
you're
not getting. You're right. You're not getting teams behind the sticks. Like, okay, it's on first down. Maybe you get a sack. Okay, now you got teams looking at 2nd and 15, 2nd and 16. Your defense looks a whole lot better at second. People love to look at the third down percentages. The next stat you look at after that is how long were those third downs?
Yeah.
When you see a team go like 0 for 8 on third down, often as not, you look at third down was usually 7, 8 yards or longer. You look at a team going, they went 5 for 7. They're 5 for 7 on third down. Well, often as not, that was 3rd and 3 or less. A lot of 3rd and 2s. And this just affects everything with the Dolphins defense. And obviously offensively, you're on a third string quarterback. You're on a rookie right now.
Expectations are just like low. Like, I mean, you even if you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I mean, they experience it's too much.
Right. It's a great help, but this quarterback does not have the experience reading defenses and making the calls, even the pre-snap reads and the forget the in-play reads that Teddy or Tua would have. And that the running game is not where they want it to be yet. We talked about this in the preseason. We said this in the preseason that was going to be the last thing to come in. That takes more cohesion.
It's starting to get. I mean, I think Mostert helped a lot. The past 2 games he started to come strong. But they're going to need to lean on that a lot more if Tua is going to continue to be out.
If Teddy's going to be out too, you're really going to have to lean on it.
Yeah.
The fact that Tua hasn't done anything yet is not surprising. However, it's a little concerning. It really removes a lot. What little optimism, was in the cup here, somebody that kind of puts a hole in the bottom of the cup that he's not doing anything yet. And Byron Jones, we kind of, we were saying this in the preseason. Again, we look like Nostradamus in the preseason, by the way, with some of this stuff.
What do we say in the preseason?
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Oh,
no.
Yeah,
it must be that bad because you went out and signed other people. He's not doing anything yet, and now he's still not doing anything. We damn near to Halloween.
Yeah.
Nice. So, that's a problem. And so the Dolphins team that we thought we might see we haven't seen them in full effect, and we're not going to see them in full effect anytime soon.
Just the nature of the injuries, yeah.
And nature of the injuries and where they are. If this move these injuries to this defensive lineman, that linebacker, maybe that guard.
It's not as impactful, but I mean, these are like premium positions. Like your left tackle going down, that's significant.
Right.
Your top cornerback going out, your starting quarterback, like those are significant injuries.
You still have to and you have to adjust it. You have to play with them, but don't try to maintain the illusion or the lie that you're going to play as well as if they were in.
Yeah.
And so, this could be a tough game this week, even though, again, you look around this league and even some of the teams with good records, like, the Giants, they just got a pretty good win over there in London. Yeah. But still, that was like, really?
I won't give them no shot. Yeah, I'm not saying they don't have no shot, but you're right. There's so much parity in this league.
It
that
really is.
you can't ever count a team out. I will say in regards to the injuries, I think that barring health, we've seen what this offense can do. And I feel like barring health, if they get Tua back, Armstead back. I mean, this toe injury for Armstead, it just seems like something he's just gonna have to kind of deal with until after the season. But even though he's been gutting it out and he's been playing well. So when they get him back, maybe he'll come, maybe he's able to play Sunday. Whenever they get Tua back and they kind of have that offense whole. I mean, we've seen how good it can be. The defense, even though Byron has been out, I don't think Byron should have this much of an impact on the entire. And it's funny because I wrote
No,
about it that this should be it might cause a trickle effect, but with the guys that they have in other spots, Javon Holland at the safety spot, Christian Wilkins, they have a good defensive line that albeit hasn't been getting pressure as much as they should. Just Byron being gone shouldn't have this big of an impact on the defense. I mean, the first 3 games, they were like bottom 5 in every defensive metric. And we're like, oh, well, they're playing Lamar Jackson. They're playing Josh Allen. Well, 2 weeks later, I mean, Zach Wilson looked like competent. I mean, he was one of the worst quarterbacks
no,
as a rookie last year, and he looked solid. Like, he didn't look like he was in over his head against any of the blitz looks. It can't just be, well, Byron's out. And so that's why we're struggling. I mean, obviously him and X were out, and it's a little different.
right.
But even in the
That's
first month of
that's
the
that's
season,
different.
it shouldn't be this bad. So even when X comes back, assuming he comes back in soon, whenever that is, if Byron comes back, because at this point, I mean, we're 5 games, we're a quarter way of the way into the season, and he hasn't even like hit the practice. He hasn't practiced since
Mhm.
January. I mean, I mean, honestly, if he's out for another 2 weeks, you have to start questioning whether he's even going to return this year. But I'm not.
Right.
We'll broach that when we get to it. But it shouldn't be that one guy is out and your defense is like cratering. I mean, this is looking like the defense that the first 8-9 games of the year last year. And I will say there were a lot of questions about the defense and with Flo being gone and did they just take advantage of a lot of cruddy quarterbacks the second half of the year? There's time to turn it around, but it's looking more like, well, maybe it fell off because Flo was gone, or this was a defense that just took advantage of a lot of bad quarterbacks. Right now, it's looking like that. Now, obviously, there's an opportunity, and there's time to turn that narrative around, but it's not looking good for the defense. And again, one player shouldn't have that big of an impact on the defense. Where these guys are missing tackles. I think the coaching staff is being outcoached. I mean, something is not right with that defense.
You're right. One player shouldn't have that much of an effect on the defense. I think 2 players, like when you took out two, and I think they've essentially been without. Xavier Howard played
Yeah,
against the
he
Bengals,
hasn't. He hasn't. Yeah, he
but
hasn't been. He wasn't himself,
that,
and he had to
yeah,
leave that game early.
that's I think they've been without they're 0-2 without their top 2 corners. Let's just say I'll say that.
That's fair.
And um and yeah, that maybe they have been underperforming. Maybe there are other parts that are underperforming, but it is. I just do think it's a ripple effect. And I think also there's a whole lot of ripple effect in teams and in sports when one thing things aren't going your way. Now it sounds Pollyannish, and maybe it sounds like it's giving too much faith to guys, but what starts to happen is guys start to try to do too much.
Yeah, and we've
And
heard that.
and
We've heard
guys
that
start
in the
to,
locker room.
and that is, and you start trying to overdo. And what's the New England Patriots mantra? Do
Do your
your
job.
job.
Yeah.
And that is a great, that really is a great mantra. It's a great mantra, and in also in life, and in any team situation, in any business. Do your job, worry about your job. If you're asked to do something more, that's one thing. But you know, don't try to overdo your job or do somebody else's job without being told to, because what's going to happen is you wind up not doing either job well, and you wind up
Yeah.
messing up your thing.
And it
And
messes up
so
the entire
then here
defensive
comes
scheme.
somebody else thinking, oh, wait a minute, they're messing up. I gotta try to compensate for them. And then no, that's not that's not how things should work, and that's not how things do work well. So, yeah, I think that there's a ripple effect there, and that the defense also, there is a lack of. I think probably right now there's a lack of confidence. There has to be a lack of confidence. If you remain confident after giving up 40 points, including a 21-point fourth quarter of the Jets, yeah, okay, there was a short field for one of the scores, but you looking overall in the season, if you're a player on that defense, it's got to be hard for them to be maintaining confidence, and and then you come, it's a tough deal. You got Kirk Cousins, who's erratic, but
He's
he's
competent.
he can put he can put up 350 on you. He can throw 4 picks.
Yeah,
he might do it in the same game, but. And then you got Dalvin run. Dalvin's going to be in the mood to run.
Justin Jefferson. If
he's
they get
playing. Yeah. Oh,
without
that's a
X or
man.
Byron, that's a problem.
That's a man. That's a man. And he's sitting there thinking it's buffet time, the Sunday brunch buffet at Hard Rock. So, yeah, I think what they're going to need this Sunday, honestly, is they need a few good things to happen early, and to get their confidence back,
get the crowd in
get
there,
the crowd going, and just change the vibe. Just change the vibe, and I'm sure being at home is going to help. Of course, like I said, Dalvin Cook's going to be
he's
at
home
home
as
too.
well, so he might have some extra fans in there too.
And he doesn't get too many chances to play the Dolphins. Don't get JB a chance to play in the stadium, once every 4 years. Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting deal. As offensively, they're going to have to lean on their running game a little bit more. If Teddy's back at practice on Thursday, I think they start him. I would.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's 5 phases of return after you're in concussion protocol in phase 4, and McDaniel even alluded to it. Like he didn't say phase 4, but he said the earliest he can come in a limited non-contact capacity is Thursday, and that's phase 4. Somebody made a good point that if you're an NFL quarterback at practice, all of the practices are non-contact. So it's not like he's got to get back in the groove of getting hit. He's just not getting hit. So if he can pass maybe phase 4 on Thursday, phase 5 on Friday, and he's cleared and able to return, and he's eligible to play, I think you throw him in there. He's gonna get the mental. Yeah. I don't know exactly. I know that Tua's been in the practice facility and whatnot, but I'm not sure if he's in all the meetings and whatnot. But if he can get the mental reps, he can get the mental reps, and then he comes Thursday and Friday, and he's getting the physical reps out there. So yeah, as of now, again, I'm kind of assuming Tua doesn't play because I even think that after everything that he's been through and even the injuries that he's still nursing, I would think that they kind of want to get him a full week's worth of practice. Teddy, if he has not exhibited any signs of a concussion, and now he's just kind of going through this process and he's good to go Thursday, Friday, he's cleared. Yeah, I do think he starts, but even so, there's a lot of uncertainty outside of him. There's X, there's Xavier Howard. Tyreek Hill left in a walking boot, and we don't really know what his status is. So as far right now, there's just too much uncertainty. If I have to pick a team to win this game, I got to go with the Vikings because there's just not the uncertainty of that. Fully healthy, if Teddy starts, I do give them a shot, but the defense has to. It's something the defense has to prove me otherwise. They don't look like themselves right now, and I'm not sure if they can win a shootout with Teddy Bridgewater quarterback right now. So me, I have to go with the Vikings in this game.
Yeah, you're right. I'd probably go with the Vikings too if I'm laying money at this point in the week. Like I said, I repeat, I definitely if Teddy's ready to go at all, I don't care if he doesn't get a physical rep. It's he's played had a lot of years, and Skylar Thompson's a 7th-round pick going into a second game.
You trust you'd rather have Skylar with, let's say, like he gets like a full weeks of physical practice reps and maybe maybe half and half on Friday, and I mean that's a walkthrough anyway. But you still rather have Teddy if you
Yeah,
can. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay. I mean, I get
because
that.
it's because again, this is why you sign him. And Teddy knows what he's looking at, and Teddy's not going to be there's. I'm not saying Skylar Thompson was rattled the other day, but Teddy's not going to be rattled in any situation. Um, he might hold the ball a little too long and get you an intentional safety, which he did during the preseason, as I recall. And we said then that's exactly what you didn't want to see out of him. But, but he's seen it. He's seen it all. He's been there. He's been through a lot. This is not a situation that's going to rattle him. And I think he's going to be pretty jacked up to play, in front of the home crowd. So, I would play him. That said, yeah, it's a lot of bad matchups right now. Looks like on the defensive side of the ball for the Dolphins, and yeah, that's the yeah, we were saying just a lot of things that don't look good, and looks like about 31 points for the Vikings, maybe, and I'll go 31-20. 31-20.
So I guess my last word on this is one of those find a way games. Mike McDaniel's a problem solver. They hired him because he's a smart guy. He knows how to fix things. This is a find a way. It doesn't matter if it's 10-6, 31, 34, 31, 20. Like it doesn't matter. You just find a way to put your guys in a position to come out with a win. And as the week goes on, we'll see who is available and who's not.
This is also, these weeks are, seriously, like, we know the honeymoon period is over, but I don't think I don't want to say the honeymoon period is over, but this is the period that we always knew was going to come. That time where, okay, now there's real adversity. Let's see how the coaching staff responds, and let's see how the players respond to how the coaching staff responds. And this, these next few weeks, and it'll be, like I said, just I don't think they're going to make or break the Mike McDaniel era with the Dolphins.
But it'll start to give us a little insight. It won't like be the defining moment but it will kind of start to tell us the makeup of him and the way he can, galvanize and control the locker room.
And also, it might not go well for him, but he might learn from it if he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And that's something that you often see coaches, every coach fails at something early on. And the question is, do you learn from it? And how quickly do you correct that? And do you correct that? Do you admit that, see that, correct it, and move forward with an attitude that gives your players the confidence that, okay, if this happens again, this is going to be handled better than it was the first time. And, let's see with Mike. Let's see with Mike McDaniel, and his first crisis, and 5-6 games in. Hey, that's what happens with a lot of new coaches. Because let's face it, you're a new coach. You're probably taking over a team a lot that's worse than the Dolphins. So you have crises, right out of the gate.
Yeah.
You have a lot of times you're not starting 3-0 with before you face your crisis. You face your crisis about the third quarter or the first game. So let's see how this works out with him.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those just find a way. Doesn't matter. It's probably not going to be pretty. It's going to be a little ugly. But you just figure it out. And again, we'll see how the Dolphins do trying to break that losing skid. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you all again so much for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, subscribe
Please,
to the Miami Herald. It's
please.
gonna be a lot of injury updates, so you definitely want to keep an eye on the Miami Herald website for all things Dolphins and everything you need to know. I hope you guys enjoy the game this weekend. We will be back next week to recap another weekend of Dolphins football. But until then, you guys take care. See ya.